Hello, and welcome to my thought for this lovely Wednesday. It's actually overcast and typical London weather. Yesterday, everybody blacked out for Black Lives Matter. I was not aware that they were doing it, otherwise, I would have done it. And I want to tell you a story that tells you why it's so important that Black lives do matter. When I was a little girl, my mother had a maid because we had a lot of money. And my mother had a maid who was on crutches, and her name was Nettie Alsop, and I adored her. I didn't just love her, I adored her. I had a very difficult mother, and Nettie was the one who cuddled me, the one who loved me, the one where I could do no wrong, and I loved her. And then my mother had my sister, and because my sister was a very rambunctious baby, she would crawl on the floor, and of course my mother would do absolutely nothing to stop her. And my sister would crawl on the floor and pull at Nettie's crutches, and Nettie had to leave. And it was the end of my world. It was the end of my world. Nettie was a black woman. She was probably at that time maybe in her early 30s, maybe. She was also a wonderful cook. Um, I used to go to the library every Monday. I went to Kent Library, and it was a good 2.5 miles away. I was, I was, when she left, we were living on Islington Street, but when we moved even farther away from Kent Library. But every Monday I would go, and Letty got a new job at the Meningers, which was on the road on Collingwood Avenue, where I walked to Kent Library. And every Monday after I went to the library, I would stop and say hello to Nettie, and she would give me cookies, and um, she would give me uh, milk, and we would talk, and she would hug me and kiss me. And that was pretty much the only hugs and kisses I got for the next several years. And one day I said to her, "Why are you on crutches?" Because at that time it was very politically incorrect to ask, to pretend that you noticed an injury, but Nettie was on crutches. And I said, "Why are you on crutches?" And she said to me, when I was a little girl, and she was 30, and this would have been, I was 10, so this would have been in the 40s. So when I was a little girl, so 30, this is in the early 1900s in Toledo, Ohio. She said, a man on a bicycle ran over me. And my daddy took me, it's hard for me to talk about this because it actually makes me cry. My daddy took me to the emergency room, and because I was black, they wouldn't treat me. And that's why I'm on crutches. And I have never, ever forgotten that. Years later, but not too many years, maybe when I was 12, Nettie asked my mother permission to take me home to be with her and her sister Carrie. And my mother, who usually said no to every single thing that anyone ever wanted to do for me, said yes. And I went there. Now, you have to know that Nettie lived in one of the first housing developments for poor people, and it was all black people. They were segregated, and it was called the Brantwood Lock Homes. And when I went there, every single home, it was brick, it was made of brick, and every single home was exquisite. It was so well tended. It was so beautiful with a little garden, and everybody kept it immaculate and clean, and it was just exquisite and clean. And I spent the afternoon with Nettie and Carrie, and it was heaven for me. Years later, I went to see the white community housing for poor people, and it was a fucking mess. It was full of garbage, and it was full of filth and full of dirt. And I am reminded of, I think his name was Rutger Burgum, who, and I always forget the name of this, so you're going to have to forgive me for looking for it, but it's, um, he wrote a book. I think it was called Blueprint for Optimists, a Blueprint for Optimists, and he talks about what poor people need, and what they need is money. What they need is money. That's all. And he said that we think that if you give people a minimum income, that they will squander it on drugs and foolishness and just use it all up. But instead, what they will do, he says, and he's got studies to prove it, they will improve themselves, they will eat better, they will live better, they will wear better clothing, they will improve themselves. And when I think of Brent Whitlock Holmes and Nettie Alsop and the beautiful, beautiful way that they took care of their beautiful home that they spent next to nothing, their rent was next to nothing, and how beautifully they cared for it, I thought, this whole world would be a better place if we would give people, if we would give people the means to make their lives better for themselves. Thank you very much for joining me for my thoughts.